Robert Barron as he preaches the gospel and shares the warmth and light of Christ with each one of us.
Peace be with you. Friends, the gospel for today is a very important theme. The theme of, to give it its traditional name, fraternal correction. So the act and the art of constructive criticism of our brothers and sisters. Now, here's the problem right away, is in our culture, there's kind of a paradox or a dilemma. On the one hand, we're a very non-judgmental society. It's about the worst thing you can be is judgmental towards someone or, discriminate against them or tell them they're doing something wrong. Who are you to tell me what to do? I mean, that's deep in our cultural DNA. But at the same time, let's be honest, and here's the paradox, at the same time, we are hypercritical of each other. We critique each other for our political point of view, for the way we look, for the positions we take on social media. Social media, don't get me started. Talk about the prevalence of criticism. Some of the most unconstructive criticism that you can possibly imagine. Something I often recommend to people that come to me for spiritual direction is do an examination of conscience at the end of the day. How critical was I of other people today? And how constructive was that criticism? Most of us sinners will accuse ourselves, if we're honest, of a lot of violations of this principle. So, don't judge. We're non-judgmental, but yet we're judging all the time. Well, so here's the question. What does the Bible have to say about this? Actually, an awful lot. And the readings for today, especially the gospel, are super helpful. First of all, over and against the sort of modern liberal etiquette, the Bible does indeed think that we should engage in fraternal correction. So listen to the prophet Ezekiel. That's our first reading for this weekend. You, son of man, I've appointed watchmen for the house of Israel. When you hear me say anything, you shall warn them for me. That's harsh and direct stuff, isn't it? That's the Lord addressing a prophet. Well, every baptized person listening to me right now, we're all prophets. By virtue of our baptism, we're priests, prophets, and kings. And so don't think, that's just for people like Ezekiel. No, it's every one of the baptized should hear these same words. You, I've appointed watchmen for the house of Israel. By the way, what's the church, according to Paul, but the new Israel? Keep that in mind. When you hear me say anything, you shall warn them for me. Do we know the teaching of the Lord? Do we know what the Lord desires? Do we ever rouse ourselves to warn others, yes, even our fellow church members, to warn them in regard to the Lord's teaching? This is anything but, let's face it, anything but a live and let live approach, or who am I to judge? I mean, this is a pretty direct command. Now, what's the ground for this? Well, I'd say, first of all, that there is a clear objective norm for the moral life. I know a lot of voices today want to say the opposite, that morality is just a matter of convention. I got my values, you got yours, and that's why, I don't judge you, you don't judge me. But the Bible has no truck with that kind of relativism and subjectivism and indifferentism. No. The Bible holds to an objectivity to moral value. Why? Because moral value is grounded in the law of God, which in turn is grounded in the very being and nature of God. So it's not a matter of, my private opinion, your private opinion. No. There's a legal structure to the moral life. It's objective. Second consideration, we are not simply individuals in the biblical view of things. Israel saw itself very much in a corporate sense. The body, the people, Israel. And then it just gets intensified in the New Testament. Paul's great imagery of the church as a body that comes up into the Catholic tradition in this idea of the church as the mystical body of Jesus. If Christ is the head and we are the members, we're the parts of that body. What does that mean? That means that it's not just a matter of my living out my private spiritual life. No, I'm part of this great organism of the church. And therefore, there's something seriously wrong with the way you're living the spiritual life. I can't just say, well, that's your problem. You worry about that. No, that's necessarily our problem. It's like a healthy organ saying to a diseased organ, well, that's for you to worry about. Well, in time, that's going to affect the entirety of the body. So in the spiritual order, we are on for each other. That's the point. We can't retreat into a private subjectivism, a live and let live. That's just not a biblical take. Okay, so that's the whether, if you want. That's the whether we should engage in fraternal correction. I think from Ezekiel on, the biblical answer is, yeah, we should. Okay, so what about the how? How do you do it? Well, here the gospel, I think, is enormously helpful. And can I recommend you just turn to it in the Gospel of Matthew and read and reread this passage, which goes through the steps of fraternal correction. And I think in a very helpful way. Listen now as the Lord begins. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. There is a world of spiritual significance, isn't there, in that little statement? See, what is the instinct that all of us sinners have? Your brother sins against you, and mind you, we're talking about a real offense. Some real injustice has been done to you. Okay. It's not just some little hang-up you have. Something objectively wrong was done to you. What do most of us do? The last person we talk to is the one who did it. Rather, we tend to go to everybody else and complain about it. Easier? Yeah, sure it is. That's why we all do it. Now, too, add social media to it. Now, go on social media, complain to the whole world about some injustice done to you. But the Lord doesn't say that. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. There's the first step. There's the first step. And how difficult it is. I get it. I know. I resist this as well. But how beautiful and how constructive that is. For you to go without telling the whole world. What does that accomplish?